your opinion, how do you think your term as president of Volusia went?
You know, I think it was, certainly my team, myself, outlined a vision that we wanted to accomplish this year, and it was a very ambitious one. So we took on a lot of big issues, ones that weren't necessarily the most popular, let's say. But I think we did a lot of good things and learned a lot as well. I think the year went really well overall. Lots of learning though, and I think that's certainly part of the transition process to make sure we're building on our successes and also building on the things that we didn't do as well. So,
cool. So what would you say is your biggest accomplishment this year?
Well, there's a few things in the works right now, so we'll see about that. But I think it's tough to pinpoint a few things, but we'll do it anyways. I think the food court piece was, again, a challenge this year, but also a huge success in my mind. It really allowed us to refocus the organization on directly supporting students and allowing you know, the food court to still operate, but we don't have to deal with this sort of day-to-day stuff. So I think that strategy change was very positive. I think our work with the labor situation with respect to faculty, you know, we had a lot of contingency plans in place that we didn't actually have to implement, but I'm very happy with how that went. Students seemed to respond to that pretty well. They liked the fact that we were engaged and were providing information, and that we were on top of that. So I think those are two big ones. I think the multi-campus piece too was great. You know, obviously there were challenges with it, but at the end of the day, it's now on everyone's radar. It's now, you know, generally speaking, everyone's bought into it. You know, they might have slightly different means as to how to do it, but you know, that wasn't necessarily on the radar, nor was it something that people were necessarily on board with before this term. So I think those three big things are key, but certainly talk about the hiring changes and all those sorts of things, not necessarily mine per se, but during my team's year. I think those were good things, for sure.
Okay. You mentioned a few of the things, like the hiring processes. A lot of situations this year were kind of, I guess, contentious, especially with, say, the Brantford situation, O-Week, the new hiring process. How well do you think you handled those situations? And do you think you could have maybe handled it a bit better or differently?
I think you always have to learn from those situations. To say that I would do them the exact same way would be very ignorant. I think it would be very much very stubborn for me to think that. With that said, overall, I think, you know, my team and myself were able to handle it pretty well. With respect to what I learned and what I can do moving forward with that sort of situation and those sorts of situations, I should say, I think there's, you know, I think you mentioned the hiring, the multi-campus piece, and then reading days. Yeah. So I think the reading break one was just something that was sort of transitioned to me this year to deal with. So it was a little bit earlier in my term. You know, obviously it came to a head in October, so a little bit into my term at that point. But the real legwork was actually happening during the summer. So I think that's something to not just assume process has already been done before, because it was really the discussions that we had during the summer for reading break. You know, there was a lot of just good discussions, but it felt like there was a lot of work been done before, to the point where this was just like finalizing details. And I think there was still, in retrospect, there was huge gaps with respect to the communication to students. You know, that can be a lot. I'm still very much in support of that proposal, and I think we still need to work on making something like that happen. But I think the communication with students and the engagement of students could have been done a little bit better. With respect to the multi-campus piece, I think the biggest thing was timelines were the challenge, which kind of got us off discipline with respect to process as well. So the communication to students could have been better. Yeah, it could have been better. But overall, I think it was actually pretty good. It was the timelines which I think put a lot of anxiety into people. So we were just too tight with timelines. It would have been nice to have had the multi-campus principals document done, you know, mid-semester as opposed to end of semester / very beginning of January. and thus had everything kind of work in chronological order. But obviously, during the course of the year, other things come up and you have to adjust those things. So that would have been nice. When it comes to the hiring changes, I think those were inevitable. Those challenges were going to be inevitable. But I don't really think there was a whole lot of other things I would have done better. Again, internal communication could have been a little bit better to employees, aka volunteers and other employees, could have been a little bit better. But I think overall that was actually one that I think was done pretty well. So
cool. So I guess communication is the one thing that if you were to do it again, would be something you would improve on?
Yeah, and I think it's something that you can never be perfect at, right? Certain people, will have to be communicated in different ways. They access, some people like email, some people like social media, some people like to be, given their communication in different ways, and you have to really figure out what's the best way to get a hold of students, what's the best way to get a hold of employees. There's all sorts of those different things. Communication is just not as simple as a lot of people like to put it out, especially with an organization with many moving parts. So you can have very good communication, but you can never have perfect communication. So I think people have to realize that, but that also means that there's always opportunities for improvement. So you need to be always improving. That's something that's certainly learned this year for sure.
Cool. Now, one of the, I think, most talked about topics this year at Laurier was mental health, and I felt like that was something that you were really pushing for. How do you think, besides I guess like the reading days, what did you hope to accomplish by pushing that kind of issue forward? Yeah,
it was knocking on wood earlier. It's something that will certainly be a transition item for next year. So there's a few things in the works right now, but reading days was a big part. The other part was that Chris Hyde, I delegated to Chris Hyde early in the year to do a mental health capacity assessment. So essentially looking on both the Waterloo and Brantford campus, what is the capacity to deal with mental health challenges, not only crisis, but also just everyday mental health challenges that students are facing. How is this campus and the Brantford campus, how are we able to deal with them? So that was a positive thing. We've really pushed in the university with respect to their sort of day-to-day strategy. So they've really worked on their strategy. We supported a strategic investment fund proposal that has been sent to the university to have sort of a person who would manage some of the cases as opposed to having the dean of students having to deal with all these crisis cases that take up a lot of time. So again, more support for students, more coordination of services. So there's been a lot of advocacy on that front. Sean Madden's been working on the more higher level with respect to doing use of paper on student success and mental health. So it's kind of been a several pronged approach, and at the end of this year, looking at doing a more broad approach with respect to student success and launching a more broader conversation about student success, because I think mental health, mental awareness challenges are really important, but we can't somehow very arbitrarily pull out mental health out of this huge mix of stuff, because it's all about student success and how do we make sure that students are successful. Their mental health is a big component of that, their physical health is a big component of that, all sorts of other factors are big components of their success. So mental health is a big piece, but we need to think about broadly about student success, and that's one thing I'm trying to finish off on and make a huge transition and make my mark in that sense.
Cool. I guess we'll go on to more fun questions.
Sure.
So
those weren't fun?
Well,
I've been in this job for 2 months.
What is the one thing that, or I guess a bunch of things that this job has taught you personally? As an individual? Yeah.
It's really, I think it's, many things. I've learned a lot of things this year. You don't realize how much you're going to learn until you're in where I am right now. I think one big thing that I've learned is what is the capacity of an organization, to do certain things. Like why organizations choose not to do certain things, and that may seem very weird, but it's all about strategy. And Strategy is not only choosing what you want to do, but what you are not going to do. And those are tough decisions because people have different interests and different values and different things that they want to, reflect and have reflected in, what is their student government. But ultimately, you have to make decisions based on a strategy which will give the best results that you think is possible for students at large. So I think strategy is a big thing. I've always been a more strategic thinker, but now, I've really had the experience this year of being, putting that into action. So strategy and strategic thinking is a big one. I think another challenge is this is a very political role, and I think one of the inherent challenges about that is, and I say this about all politicians, that people, and this is not a negative point of view, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but people have to realize that this does happen. That some people will say, be bold, I want you to do things that are not popular and implement them, make them happen. Then you do that, and on the other side they'll be like, well, the majority of people don't agree, right? So it's not necessarily that they are inconsistent with each other, but they're certainly not consistent with each other, right? So it's really about, some people have very self-interested points of view, and that they'll assert them very strongly. And it's not that they're bad people to have self-interest, that's the nature of the beast, but it's very, very important that you identify what is self-interest and what is something that, what is for the benefit of the most amount of students and to students in general. I think the last thing is it's all about intention and motives. Even if someone makes a mistake, even if someone doesn't do the best thing that they could have done, they've done something bad, it's all about their intention. If they did not intend to do that, if their motive was not to do bad things, but just that it happens, I think people have to be a lot more forgiving, a lot more understanding that people are still learning. And I'm not saying that for myself. People can make their own judgments on that front, but I think that's just something I've learned when I'm watching people, whether it's employees or even just people around me. When challenges come up, people try to demonize as opposed to thinking about what they are trying to do. Even if you disagree with the idea. Having ad hominem sort of attacks and challenges does not help us, does not bring us forward, does not create better outcomes for people. So it is a challenge sometimes. Sometimes you get caught up in the moment and things happen, and that's not a bad thing. Just realize that when you do that, it's not helping the situation, and you ought not do that in the future. So many things I've learned, but those are some big, very thematic things throughout the year for sure.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. So what is the one thing that you'll miss this job?
I think the biggest thing is two things. First one is just the day-to-day, interacting with students, but also interacting with the staff around here. It's just an awesome experience. They're all great people, good at what they do, and just fun to be around. And you learn a lot from them. I think the other piece is I'm an information seeker. I try to get as much information as I can, and even if it's literally for no particular reason, I just want more information. And this role, certainly you get lots of information. You always want more. But the fact that I won't be in this role next year will certainly be interesting in the sense that I won't have access to as much information with respect to this, with respect to the Laurier and the campus and stuff like that. So that'll be something interesting to adjust to for me. But I think just, and again, this sounds corny, but I just love the opportunity to serve people, to make changes that are positive in my mind. Obviously, people can make judgments on that as they see fit. But I did relish that opportunity, and I think I've tried my best to take advantage of that opportunity. And I will continue to do that and serving others in different ways as I move forward. But this was certainly a highlight of my life so far, if you will. It'll be something I certainly miss. But bigger, better challenges hopefully ahead. So that's the game plan moving forward.
Okay. If you had the opportunity, would you ever do it again?
let's just say crossed my mind very, very seriously at some point during this term. But would I do it again? It's hard to say, because I would theoretically would love to do this again, but because like all other sort of these other external factors, the fact that I'm going to be older, the fact that there'll be a huge difference between my first year students and myself if I were to do it again. That all these different sort of things, I'd say no. The experience itself, though, I did really appreciate. So if that makes any sense, I think just the reality is I wouldn't do it again, but I loved the role. And if somehow I just woke up one day and I was the president again, I wouldn't be angry. So. Just as long as I didn't have to move in and out of my apartment again. I just woke up that morning, everything was there again. Labor, none of that labor stuff, hard labor.
Yeah, this is another kind of,
What if?
Well, kind of, I guess, happy question.
Sure.
What is your favorite thing about, I guess, Laurier as a whole? And why you chose to take on such a role? And what you want to name it?
Man.
It's a very large question.
Yeah. Can I get back to you in 6 days? I think, what is the greatest thing about Laurier? I think that just the community atmosphere, and again, people talk about that all the time, but I think you really get that feel when you're in this role. In positive ways and not so positive ways. So that, it bends both ways. But I think that is an inherently positive thing about our organization, but also about the students and the campuses in general. So it's a value in the strapline, for example, not to pull up my nerdy stuff, but it's there for a reason. People value it, and people feel that it contributes to better outcomes and better experience for people. It certainly does for me. I think Laurier, from a students' union perspective, and from the participation by students, even by just volunteers in general, and students in general that aren't necessarily related to the students' union, with their employment, I think there's just a culture of volunteerism. There's a culture of personal growth. There's a culture of just doing things the best, and I think. There's always challenges in our organization and things that we always have to improve on. But if I look, everywhere around us, look at our schools, our organization performs very well. That we are. It's funny. Like there's some organizations that don't have open board meetings. That's just how they operate, right? And again, that's not the worst thing in the world. But it certainly is a difference, and people can make their judgments on that. But just little things like that, or even just different governance challenges. People have different challenges at different campuses, different schools, I should say, and different universities. We just tend to do things very well, and people call me all the time. Like in the summer, I had Dalhousie student executive call me and talk to me about Shinorama. And how we do so well at Shinorama. Do we pay our Shinorama volunteer? But that's just what we do. I had a call the other day from UBC, and they're having issues with renegotiating their union, a contract with their union staff. So they have unionized staff within their student organization, which is certainly a different dynamic. And they just thought that we would have a lot of insight on that. I mean, BC and Laurier, they're calling Laurier, right? Obviously, they're getting information from elsewhere, but there's many institutions across the country, and they're calling here. So I mean, that's an awesome, reflection on the competence and the value added that we can provide for students, not only on this campus in Brantford and Milton, if that comes to fruition. But beyond or even our borders at Laurier. So, I think that's a positive thing for sure.
Okay. So, what advice do you have to offer for Michael Onabala, who's going to take over?
Yeah. Really?
In May.
So, crazy. I should probably get going on cleaning my desk. No, but really, if you've seen it lately all year. I think the biggest thing, and I mentioned this before, is all about intentions, right? If you intend well, yes, you're going to make mistakes. That is a given. You will make mistakes, and that's not to mean that he's not going to do a good job. He's going to do a good job. You will make mistakes, but if you intend to do good all the time, you are not doing things for the wrong reasons, things will work out. He's a hard worker. He intends to do things well. He has those good intentions that I'm talking about. He will make mistakes, but at the end of the day, he can feel good with himself because he knows that he did everything with good intentions. And it's not that simple, but it is that simple, because if you work hard and you have good intentions, your good intentions are going to make you try to do the best work, and your hard work is going to ensure that you do the best work. So I think those are the biggest two things, and the other two things is just separate the personal from the professional. You're going to have times when people will attack you as the president and CEO, and it will be very unclear as to whether they're attacking you or your position. I've had my fair share, and I think the biggest thing is just separating that, listening for what the performance issues they're talking about, taking it as a professional criticism, which is still challenging, but trying to remove that personal part. If you don't do that, it becomes really, really challenging, and it's very difficult. So always having that support line, which is my last piece, having that line of support, which is just outside of the organization. Whether it can be on campus or it can be at home, it can be just friends from the other place down the road, UW. It can be from anywhere. Just having that support place that can allow you to just remove yourself for a little while. So those are the big things: intentions, hard work, and somewhere to relax and de-stress when you need it.
All right. Last question. What is, I guess, if you had to say it in one sentence, what is the last thing you want to, well, I know you have one more term left, but what's the last thing you want to tell, I guess, the students of Laurier?
Is there something planned here that I don't know about? I'm just kidding. Sorry.
If you had one message,
no.
It's a cheesy question.
Yeah, no, it's fair. What would I say? I think it's the same thing I said to first year students during orientation week. You have a tremendous opportunity as university students. 1% of the whole world goes to university. The whole world. Of those people, many do not take advantage of the opportunities that they have at their disposal. At Laurier, we have not only strong academics, everything could be better, but we still have a very strong academic program. We also have a very strong extracurricular, co-curricular, culture and opportunities. It really should not be differentiated like that, because all of those things are learning opportunities. And university is about learning, and if we don't take advantage of all those opportunities, or some of those opportunities, we're not going to get all of them, you're not doing yourself a service, you're not doing others a service, and thus you're not going to be as strong as you possibly can to contribute to society as you move on. So take advantage, even if you're in first year and you take on one thing, just one thing that you're passionate about, do that. Do it well, and at the end of the year you'll be able to say, okay, I actually have a little bit more time to take something else on. You can make that assessment, whether you're here 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, beyond. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, do what you can. Learn you're learning all the time, academics or outside of that. Take advantage of the opportunities that you have. If you do not do that, you're not doing yourself a service, and you're not doing others a service. So that's the biggest thing.
Cool. All right, thanks for your time.
Thanks, man.